South Africa replaces senior provincial police leadership far more often than it replaces premiers, and every single change resets crime-fighting momentum to zero. That reality frames the moment we are in now, as political pressure, public fear, and institutional stability collide in KwaZulu-Natal. This is not just another headline about internal government disagreement. It is a test of whether leadership continuity still matters in an age of constant political noise. If you care about how decisions at the top quietly shape safety on the ground, subscribe now and make sure you watch this story all the way to the end. Because what unfolds here goes far beyond party praise or political rivalry. When Premier Nhlanhla took a firm position on retaining Lieutenant General Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi, he stepped directly into a space most leaders try to avoid. Police leadership is never a neutral subject, especially in a province where crime statistics carry real emotional weight for communities. The decision immediately raised a question that rarely gets asked openly. Why does stability in policing leadership trigger so much resistance, even when performance and continuity argue in its favor? That question sits at the heart of why this moment matters more than it first appears. The Inkatha Freedom Party's public commendation of Nhlanhla was not routine political politeness. In a system where opposition voices often default to criticism, open praise signals something deeper than agreement on a single decision. It reflects recognition that certain choices rise above party lines when the consequences affect the safety and confidence of millions. This is one of those rare moments where political rivals acknowledge that leadership sometimes means absorbing pressure rather than redistributing it. To understand the stakes, picture a province navigating a surge in violent crime while simultaneously being asked to adjust to new leadership philosophies, new command styles, and new internal priorities. Policing is not a machine that can be rebooted overnight. It relies on trust built within ranks, on intelligence networks that mature over time, and on leadership that understands local dynamics beyond briefing notes. Removing or retaining a provincial commissioner is not symbolic, it is operational. Veteran officers often describe leadership changes as earthquakes that don't show immediate damage, but weaken foundations beneath the surface. Informal communication channels freeze, long-term investigations stall, and decision-making becomes cautious instead of decisive. In that context, Nhlanhla's stance can be read as a deliberate effort to protect institutional rhythm at a time when disruption would be easy but costly. There is also a quieter political reality at play. Leaders are constantly pressured to demonstrate authority through action, and action is often confused with replacement. Keeping someone in place is rarely framed as strength, yet it often requires more conviction than removal. By choosing continuity, Nhlanhla effectively rejected the idea that visible change is always meaningful change, a stance that carries political risk in an environment hungry for decisive gestures. Behind public statements, this decision reshapes internal expectations across government. It signals to senior officials that performance and stability may weigh more than political convenience. That kind of signal changes behavior long before it changes headlines, and it is precisely why it draws both praise and criticism in equal measure. If you are still with this story, make sure you are subscribed and stay to the end, because we are just reaching the point where the deeper implications begin to surface. And they affect far more than one premier or one police general. As the conversation widens, attention shifts from the decision itself to what it represents about governance under pressure. KwaZulu-Natal has long been a province where policing decisions are magnified by history, demographics, and political competition. Every move is interpreted not only for its immediate effect, but for what it suggests about control, influence, and future direction. One overlooked aspect is how public confidence responds to leadership continuity. Communities rarely expect instant results, but they do respond to consistency. Seeing the same leadership figures over time allows the public to measure progress against familiar benchmarks rather than constantly recalibrating expectations. That continuity creates a psychological anchor in an otherwise uncertain security environment. There is also an internal power recalibration that happens when a premier openly backs a senior police official. It alters how different departments interact, how accountability is enforced, and how responsibility is allocated when things go wrong. Support at the top can either embolden professionalism or expose weakness, and that dual possibility makes such decisions inherently risky. Analysts often note that policing reform fails when stability is treated as an obstacle instead of a prerequisite. Structural changes, strategic shifts, and accountability measures all require a stable leadership platform to function. Without it, reforms remain theoretical, announced but never embedded. Retention, in this sense, becomes a strategic pause that allows deeper systems to catch up. This is why the IFP's response carries weight beyond party messaging. It reflects an understanding that effective governance sometimes means defending institutions from the turbulence of politics. In a climate where public trust is fragile, even small gestures toward stability can resonate far beyond their immediate context. The debate also exposes a broader national pattern. Across South Africa, senior security appointments are increasingly politicized, with leadership changes framed as solutions rather than symptoms. Nhlanhla's stand challenges that reflex and invites a more uncomfortable conversation about whether constant change has become a substitute for accountability. Looking ahead, this moment may influence how future premiers respond to similar pressure. Precedents matter in politics, especially those set quietly. By choosing continuity and standing firm under scrutiny, Nhlanhla has introduced a reference point that others may either follow or deliberately reject. As we approach the final stretch, it becomes clear that this is not just about one individual or one term of office. It is about how leadership choices ripple through systems that citizens rely on daily, but rarely see. Decisions like these shape morale, effectiveness, and trust long after the media cycle has moved on. If you want more deep dives like this into the power dynamics behind the headlines, now is the time to subscribe, stay engaged, and watch right through to the end. Because understanding governance means looking past the noise to the consequences. In the end, the significance of Premier Nhlanhla's stance lies in its restraint. In a political environment that rewards motion, he chose position. In a moment that invited appeasement, he chose judgment. The IFP's commendation is less about alliance and more about acknowledgement that leadership sometimes means holding the line rather than redrawing it. This decision will be tested not by speeches or statements, but by outcomes over time. Crime trends, internal cohesion, and public confidence will ultimately tell the story. For now, what stands out is the willingness to prioritize institutional stability in a system often driven by short-term calculations. That is why this moment deserves attention. Not because it resolves the province's challenges, but because it reveals how power is exercised when the stakes are high and the answers are not simple. Stay subscribed for future breakdowns of how decisions like this quietly shape the country's direction, and thank you for watching to the very end.